Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listener, to Kardec Radio. We are here live at the Chantilly, Virginia studios at Kardec Radio, and we are very happy that we have a special guest with us. Dr. friend Robert Schwartz is here. He wrote the book, mainly the book, Your Soul's Plan, which is a book that we want to discuss on the program today. It's not the only book he has written, but it's the main book we want to discuss today. Not only the book, but the ideas that pertain to it. And you can read more about it at the website, yoursoulsplan.com. And, you know, Robert Schwartz has a very interesting story. And I think one of the most interesting parts is the fact that he not only found his deeper meaning of life, as he said in his own website, but he shares the insights with us. This is commendable because many people find it, but there's still something missing there. They don't share. And he talks about like helping somebody else in his very website, and there are so many wonderful, interesting things for us. We're going to discuss an idea that Allan Kardec himself, in the Spirit's book, he also talked about it when he starts talking about the choice of trials in 1857. It starts in question and answer 258. The question is pretty much whether or not we have an idea about what's going to happen in another life. And the answer of the illuminated spirits was, the spirit itself chooses the kinds of trials it will undergo. Its free will consists in doing so. And then Kardec keeps asking, because he wants greater clarification, then is it not God who imposes the tribulations of life on it as a chastisement? And the answer is fascinating. Nothing happens without God's permission, because it was God that established all the laws that govern the universe. You may as well ask why God made such and such a law instead of some other one. In giving His Spirit freedom of choice, God leaves to it the entire responsibility for its acts and their consequences. Nothing stands in the way of its future. The path of the good or the path of wrongdoing is an open choice. If the spirit succumbs to its trials, there is still the consolation that not everything is lost, because God, out of divine goodness, allows it to start over where it failed. Amazing. Amazing. The answer continues, but we want to stop here because this is just a way to connect us into the topic today. There's much to be understood. There's much to be discussed and studied, and here's an opportunity. But as the message finalized the comment, we should keep our optimism. We should be very joyful in life, because there is always a way out. There's always a new beginning. There is always another opportunity. And to kickstart the program here, in the highest tone, we have a message from Joana de Angelis, Spirit, through the medium, Divaldo Franco, and it's in the CD and book, Living and Loving, which you can find at the bookstore of the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, www.ssbaltimore.org. Let us listen to this message right after the break. And the message in the break, I'm going to bring to you Robert Schwartz, who is going to tell us so many interesting things.
Chapter 6. Keep your optimism.
The dispirited companion who walks by your side may be facing a crucial ordeal. That friend of yours who slipped into delinquency may have tried hard to avoid crime. The other one who succumbed to vice may have fought against it but was not strong enough. The co-worker who discontinued service might have tried to stay in his place but was unable to comply. The friend who suddenly became your enemy may not have been able to overcome his pernicious tendencies. People acting negatively need understanding rather than criticism. Some might have wished to act differently but could not help themselves. A few others may be secretly trying to fight their negative drives. Many may have already acted as anonymous heroes but are now in disgrace. All of them need a new opportunity to prove themselves, that they can change their behavior. They may never ask for help. Still, they should be given a new chance. Consider the positive side of people's actions and forget their weaknesses. Do not reject them. It is easy to fraternize with nice and diligent people always willing to cooperate and serve. It is agreeable to enjoy the company of worthy persons. But they also have problems of which you probably know nothing about. The earth is both a school and a hospital for unhealthy souls. Nobody living on earth now is an exception from this rule. It is useless to seek the company of angels, since they are not incarnate on earth now. All people on this planet bear the same characteristics as yourself. They suffer, have their own limitations, and they want to live in peace, and they dream with happiness. Try not to comment on the deficiency of others. If you cannot help them, keep silent and excuse them when they hurt you. Do not be disheartened by their behavior. If you know what you are looking for and are willing to serve, go on acting as you know best, and be gentle to all who come your way. Do not harbor grief or disappointment within your heart. Be an optimist. Help those who have gone astray back to the right road. Abandoned and betrayed, Jesus was never disheartened. Never did he display resentment. He was the great winner of all the battles that life reserved for him.
We will return to our program after these messages. Want to learn more about the ins and outs of mediumship? The book, In the Realms of Mediumship, by the spirit doctor Andre Louise through the medium Chico Xavier, analyzes the various aspects of mediumistic communication and mediumship. He also praises the efforts of mediums who are faithful to the spiritual mandate they received before they reincarnated, warning them about the risks of badly practiced exchanges between the two worlds. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com.
The Spiritist magazine is a trimestral, digital periodical that publishes the latest news on the Spiritist thought and the movement in the USA and worldwide at www.spiritistmagazine.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Study Spiritism online at eSpiritism. eSpiritism is an online tool to promote the study and practice of Spiritism while contributing to the preparation of Spiritist practitioners. For full access to courses, go to www.e-spiritism.org.
If you missed out on any previous shows, no worries. We have an on-demand section of all previous shows and interviews. Go to our website at www.kardecradio.com.
Emmanuel's Novels. The reputable mentor, Emmanuel, wrote a 5-book series of Spiritist novels that can truly transform your life. Starting with 2,000 Years Ago, Emmanuel delights our minds with the true account of characters that are so similar to each of us. Discover yourself in Emmanuel's novels and live better. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com. And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we want to share with you before we open the line for Robert Schwartz that on June the 28th, the Tri-State Federation is organizing again another Family Spiritist retreat. And it's one of the largest Spiritist events in the United States. I think it's probably the largest because hundreds and hundreds of families go there, spend a whole day in the park, and having activities from babies to elderly people. It's so much fun. Go to their website and see the pictures. You'll see it for yourself. FamilySpiritistRetreat.org. The registrations are open. They are open. Why don't you join it? It's a beautiful, beautiful day. Lots of activities. It's so much fun, so much learning, and it's about making new friends too, and spending time, having a good time with your family too. By the way, we can't forget May 2nd, the United States Spiritist Council is organizing its 8th Spiritist Symposium, and you can join it by going to the website spiritistsymposium.org and getting to know information about registration, spending the whole day listening to beautiful talks, making new friends, and you know, it's much more than that, but you only know if you go there. Well, right now we are going to go to the very topic about the meaning of our lives. It's so interesting. We may be sometimes second guessing, like, am I doing the right thing in this life? Am I, living in the city I should be living, in the country I should be living? Or, for example, am I married to the person I should be married to? Should I have had these children? Or what about this job? What about this family I have? I feel sometimes, out of place. Why? Is it all a plan or not? Let us discuss. Spiritism has also a lot to share. But Robert Schwartz, who wrote the book, Your Soul's Plan, is here with us. Thank you so much, Robert, for being with us at Cardiac Radio today.
You're welcome, Vanessa. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you.
Thank you, Robert. We're talking about meaning of life, and we know it's not second nature for people to become aware about the meaning of their lives. And I know you had your own journey, and you had a specific date in which things changed in that regard. Would you please share that with us?
I'd be happy to. Before I ever wrote the book, Your Soul's Plan, or the second book, Your Soul's Gift, I was in the corporate world. I actually have an MBA, which I imagine is atypical for the author of a couple of New Age books. And I was in the corporate world, self-employed as a marketing and communications consultant for a number of years, basically doing different forms of corporate writing. And I found this work to be tremendously unfulfilling. I often had the feeling that if I were to fall off the face of the earth, none of my clients would even know that I were gone. They would simply plug somebody else into my role and carry right along. But then, as you mentioned, on a single day, and it was May 7 of 2003, my life changed. And what happened on that day was that I went, for the first time ever, to see a medium. Now, I come from a very conventional background. Mediumship is not part of that background. I wasn't even sure if I believed in mediumship, but I was having this existential crisis with my life, feeling that there was a higher calling or a higher purpose for me, but I didn't know what it was, and I had hoped that the medium could help to clarify this for me. So on May 7th of 2003, I went for the first time ever to see a medium. she introduced me to the concept of spirit guides. I had never even heard that term before, and she explained to me that a spirit guide is a highly evolved, non-physical being with whom we plan our lives prior to birth and who then guides us through our lives after we come into body. And through this particular medium, I was actually able to talk with my guides. Now, they said a lot of amazing things to me that day, one of which was they said, you planned your life, including your biggest challenges, before you were born. And I will tell you, I just shook my head, and I said, well, why in the world did I do that? And they said, well, you did this for purposes of spiritual growth. So we went on and we talked about some of my specific challenges, and they were able to tell me why I had wanted, before I was born, to have these very difficult experiences. And it was that session with the medium that changed everything. I came out of that session with a totally new perspective on life and ended up, over the next several years, writing Your Soul's Plan, discovering the real meaning of the life you planned before you were born.
Yeah, so it matches so much what we read before regarding Kardec's teaching. It's amazing how, it just fits. The understanding that it's not by chance. Everything has a purpose, and we are here to grow. But when you heard about that, because, some people may receive such information after some spirit readings, etc., but they believe it, but it doesn't really sink in. After, you got that information, what was the major thing that made you shift completely your life?
Well, for me, this perspective resonated as true. When we talk about mediumship, sometimes we say that mediums are claircognizant, that they have clear knowing. And I had that claircognizant experience when I received this information. I just knew intuitively, instinctively, that it was true, even if it didn't make logical sense to my analytic mind. But in the weeks after that session, the reason it produced such a shift for me is that it allowed me to review the course of my life and for the first time, in many instances, see a deeper meaning or a deeper purpose to the most challenging things that had happened. And for me, that was a deeply healing experience. So I realized that I was onto a concept that could bring a similar kind of healing to other people, and that prompted me to shift careers completely. I left the corporate world, spent the next 3 years full-time writing Your Soul's Plan without knowing whether or not anyone was even going to be interested in reading what I was writing. But I trusted. I had a feeling of intuitive rightness about this. There's an old saying that a writer is somebody who has something to say and absolutely has to say it. And that saying very much applies to me, because I had to say this even if nobody was going to read it. Then it turned out that many people were interested in it, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yes, and you're right. It's something we all need to pay attention to, because once you've got to know that we come here and there is a plan, and a plan that fosters growth, life is going to be taken from a whole new perspective. Everything changes. Would you say that even relationships can change?
I think it changes everything. And the main change that it brings about, Vanessa, is that when something seemingly bad happens, it helps to pull you out of victim consciousness. We live in a universe of energy, of vibration, of frequency. Everything is energy vibrating at a certain frequency. So victim consciousness, as I understand it, is the lowest frequency, the lowest vibration that a person can be at. And it tends to be self-perpetuating, because once you go into victim mentality and you're at that vibration, then that vibration magnetizes to you more experiences that seem to confirm to you that you are in fact a victim, and so it perpetuates itself. But when you understand that you are the powerful creator of your life and you're then the plan for your life, that pulls you out of victim consciousness. You immediately start to look for the deeper meaning. So what I often do if something challenging comes up, I ask the question, if I planned this before I was born, why might I have done that? And you notice the way the question is worded, it doesn't necessarily even require a belief in pre-birth planning. You just say, if I planned it, why might I have done that? Then you immediately pull yourself out of victim consciousness, get to the underlying lessons, and once you know what those are, you can learn them in a much less painful and much more conscious manner.
Yeah, it's so interesting because the questions you ask make us think about, for example, people who are undergoing very difficult situations, and we're talking about cruelty, for example. People who are subjected to very cruel people, and only reincarnation would make us understand the foundation of such experiences. But history tells us that even in the worst case scenario, you can get out of this victim feeling and perspective and really be proactive in bouncing back up and beginning anew and trying something totally different and helping and reaching out to others who have a similar experience, right? Isn't that what you found out too?
That's really what it is all about. Oh, and let me mention here, Vanessa, that on my website, yoursoulsplan.com, people can read large portions of Your Soul's Plan and Your Soul's Gift for free on the books page. But, you mentioned people who have been treated cruelly or been abused. In my second book, Your Soul's Gift, there is an entire chapter about a woman who plans prior to birth to be in an abusive relationship with a man. And so, of course, we would ask the question, why in the world would any soul plan such a thing? And you said that reincarnation explains it. And it does in this case. This woman and this man had a previous lifetime together. It was in a prehistoric era in which she was this soul's mother, and he was killed at a very young age. She was unable to protect him, and she felt that had been a failure on her part. So she wanted in the current lifetime to have another chance to, quote-unquote, get it right, which is not an uncommon motivation for planning a life challenge. And in her pre-birth planning session, her guide tells her very clearly that this other soul is carrying back into body certain unhealed energies, not for the purpose of expressing them, but rather for the purpose of hopefully healing them. But it's understood that this will be so difficult for him that these unhealed energies may get expressed in the form of him being physically abusive. And she says, I want to take on this challenge. I want to help him heal. I want to get right and protect him in ways that I could not in the previous lifetime. And so the plan that is set up is that they will form a romantic relationship, and then it's anticipated he will be physically abusive. She plans to stay with him for a certain period of time in the hopes of helping him heal, but the plan then is that if he is unable or unwilling to do that, that she will leave him. The soul does not seek to be abused indefinitely. The soul ultimately seeks joy in a physical incarnation. So she did eventually leave him. And so he will now have alternate paths of healing drawn to him, but the healing won't be done with this particular woman.
It's interesting. And it's interesting when you mention that the healing not necessarily will happen with the very same people. And this is fascinating because the goal is for everyone to progress. Not necessarily we won't achieve it with the very people we experience XYZ experiences. The goal is to achieve it as a being in relationships in general. We keep informing the listeners, Rob, that the goal in lives is to master our relationship with ourselves, the relationship we have with God, and relationship with others. What else is life all about? From your experience on the cases you have, wouldn't you conclude that as well?
I completely agree with that. One of the things that I see as I examine people's pre-birth plans, and I should explain here how I do this research.
Okay.
For a number of years, and in the writing of the two books, Your Soul's Plan and Your Soul's Gift, all of the research about people's pre-birth plans was done with mediums and channels who, in one way or another, could access information about a person's pre-birth plan. After the first book, Your Soul's Plan, came out, people immediately started writing to me saying, I'd like to know what I planned before I was born. And for a number of years, I always wrote back with the same response. I would say, I'm not a medium or channel. If you'd like to know your pre-birth plan, you should work with one of the mediums or channels in the book or choose another to work with. Mm-hmm. But then it occurred to me, there is a way that I can help people get this information themselves, and that is with hypnotic regression, specifically with what is called a between-life soul regression. So now the work that I do to examine people's pre-birth plans consists of working with the mediums and channels, but also in my private hypnosis practice doing the between-life soul regressions with people, in which we actually take a portion of their consciousness over to the other side and talk with what is called the Council of Elders. These are the very wise, highly evolved, and loving beings who oversee the cycle of reincarnation on Earth. They know everything about every person, including their life plan. And so if you get in front of the council, that is potentially a life-changing experience because they can answer any question on any subject, including what did you plan and why did you make those plans. But to come back to your original question, when I do this research with the mediums or in the hypnosis, we go into people's pre-birth planning sessions, what I found is that very often people are planning life challenges to develop certain qualities that are important to the soul. I've given the name divine virtues to these qualities. There are many of them, but there's about 28 that seem to come up more often than others. And so these 28 divine virtues, one of them is self-control, mastering your own emotions, your own mind, and in turn your relationship with yourself, with other people, and with God. So it is very much as you described.
Wow, that's interesting. So you talked about 28 divine virtues, and you released like one of them, self-control. Can you give us two more, just so we have an idea about the other ones?
The divine virtues are things compassion, unconditional love, patience, empathy, forgiveness. Those are some of the main ones.
And the question is, in the cases you've studied, you found out that the challenges come from these growth purposes. And in the settings that usually are planned, would you say that the first major, let's say, school to achieve it is family? Is family the first place where people potentially can develop those divine virtues?
I think that is necessarily true because, as I understand it, parents always choose their children, and children always choose their parents. And by the way, that is true in cases of adoption as well. In my second book, Your Soul's Gift, I have a chapter about the pre-birth planning of adoption, and what we found is that adoption is planned prior to birth, just as is choosing biological parents.
And it's true. We in Spiritism, Rob, have a book. It's fascinating how, what I love is probably you have never read any book about Spiritism, but everything you bring, what I find the beauty of it all is like the universality of these teachings. And Kardec used to say, when you have mediums who don't know each other and are releasing information that is so matching, it really forms the body of truth because they didn't communicate with one another to actually, twist the truth. So it's another sign of it. Besides, it makes so much sense. But there is a book named And Life Goes On that talks about adoption at the end of it, talking about the behind the scenes of adoption. And the spirit, André Luiz, through the medium Chico Xavier, he explains how the pre-birth planning of this spirit actually happened before adoption came true. So it's fascinating, and I think, have you come across people who changed their feeling about adoption or their attitude about their adopted children after they've got the certainty of their reincarnatory plan or their soul's plan, as you say?
I think the woman who is the focus of the adoption chapter in Your Soul's Gift is a good example of that. The work that she and I did together with the mediums and channels helped her to understand, and I think she already knew intuitively, but it helped her to really understand not only that she planned to be adopted, but also why she created that plan. And so it took something that on the surface seemed to be random or arbitrary or perhaps meaningless even, and gave it a much, much deeper meaning and a much deeper purpose. So I think it transformed the way she looked at it.
Yeah, it's interesting. And would you say that for the connection, as you say about the growth, Allan Kardec was explaining to us that when you choose certain trials, let's say this way, or experiences to go through, it's because of previous lives' experiences and choices. Can you give us another example of that relationship between the plan for this life and what happened in a previous life?
Well, a very simple example, and I'm going to speak hypothetically here rather than about a specific person, but let's say that two people had a past life together in which one was ill and the other person was that person's caregiver. When those two people transition back into spirit and have their life review, as we all do, they may have a sense of unbalanced energy around that relationship. And I want to emphasize the word may, because they also might not. And it's up to those two people to decide, are we complete with this experience or do we feel that the energy is unbalanced? They themselves make that choice. Now, if they feel that the energy is unbalanced, that can very well lead them to plan another lifetime together in which they trade places. So now the one who was ill becomes the caregiver, and the one who was the caregiver pre-plans the life challenge of physical illness. By trading places like that, it allows them to balance and therefore complete the energy from the previous lifetime.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's so interesting that you're saying that, because let's talk about diseases, for example. Cases in which people develop a certain condition and it's nothing related to this life. It's not about any abuse of our own health. It's something that just happens. What would you say in that regard? Do you have cases that discuss that as well?
Well, I'll share with you a story. It's not in either of my books, but a story from my hypnosis practice. I had a client, a man in his mid-50s, who his entire life he had pain of unknown origin in his left heel, and doctors were baffled by it. They had no idea how to treat it. Well, he did a past life regression with me in which he went back to a past life in India. And he saw himself as a young boy. He was walking through a forest when he saw an animal, and he started to chase the animal. And as he was chasing it, he tripped over a rock, injured his left heel, and actually was crippled for the remainder of that lifetime, and also very bitter about the experience. He never reached a point of acceptance during that lifetime. Now, when I was working with this man, he was lying initially, as most clients do, on his back, flat on a Reiki table. And as he saw himself running through the jungle in India, he began moving his arms and legs and was actually doing a running motion on the table. Well, after the session was over and he came out of trance, he announced to me that the pain in his left heel was no longer there. And then I followed up with him a few weeks later, and he said he was still free of the pain. The clinical term for this is abreaction. Abreaction refers to when a person goes back to the past life origin of a current life issue simply by re-experiencing the origin of the issue, there's often a partial or sometimes even a full healing of the issue in the current lifetime. We don't know how abreaction works. We simply know that it does work. And in this gentleman's case, it worked in very powerful ways.
Interesting. That's very interesting. So in his case, he needed to go through that remaining experience to really go over his nagging and complaining about it. What was the purpose of it?
I think one of the things I see in my work is that healing that is not complete in a previous lifetime, the energies that are unhealed are often carried back into body for the purpose of healing them. Now, in his case, the unhealed energy, I'm not talking so much about his physical disability in that past life in India, but rather more so his emotional reaction to it, the fact that he didn't get to a place of acceptance, which, by the way, acceptance is one of the divine virtues. He was very bitter and angry about the injury in that lifetime. So, presumably, he would have chosen at the soul level to carry this bitterness or anger or lack of acceptance energetically back into body for the purpose of healing it. And it manifested throughout the 50 or 55 years of his life as the pain in the left heel. And then somehow there was an energetic release, the abreaction, when he went back and experienced the past life origin. But you can imagine that from the soul level, that 55 or so years of having pain in his left heel, it gives him an opportunity to do what he could not do successfully in the past life in India. It gives him an opportunity to get to a place of acceptance for something that is beyond his control. And this is very common. The soul seeks to achieve in a new lifetime what it could not heal or accomplish in a past lifetime.
We have here a friend of ours, Debbie Caron from Connecticut. She's saying at Kardec Radio, truly enjoyed Mr. Schwartz's last two books and have even purchased several copies of Your Soul's Plan and giving them out as gifts. Is there a third book in the works? She's asking. Is it?
There is a third book in the works. I'm really just starting on it now. And if any of the people listening today would like to be considered and share their story in the book, I would love to hear from them. The people who will go into the book will receive a free Between Lives soul regression. Now, I should say here that Between Lives soul regressions are very long, usually about 3.5 hours. And because the session is so long, I'm able to offer it for free only to people who already know from experience with hypnotic regression that they go into trance very easily and very deeply. But if someone is listening to the show who knows that they do go into trance easily and deeply, I would like very much to hear from you. And you can reach me through my website at yoursoulsplan.com or by writing rob.schwartz at yoursoulsplan.com.
That's interesting, Rob. And, the way you research on this really reminds me of Allan Kardec, because at his time he would go through these experiences, work with the mediums, reach conclusions, etc. So it's really, really fascinating. We need to give a break, but when we come back, we have more questions to relate to you, okay?
Sounds good.
We will return to our program after these messages.
New release, Liberation. In this compelling narrative, Andre Louise emphasizes the work of high-order spirits in the effort to convert the spirit Gregorio to the good, an effort that culminates with the unforgettable re-encounter with his mother, herself a highly evolved spirit, wherein he surrenders to the irresistible call of love. The book also contains information on how unhappy spirits act as they try to involve incarnates in their wiles. The spirit author tells of the intercession of high-order spirits on behalf of human beings, demonstrating the divine compassion that grants to all the blessed opportunity to free themselves by means of study, labor, and persevering service in the practice of the good. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Want Spiritus books for your children? At Eddie Save America, you will find a collection of them. From the best-selling book, Our Father, in which the Spirit May May through Chico Xavier brought countless poems, stories, and folk tales based on the Lord's Prayer, to the beautiful and educational collection by the author Adelson Sales on Back to School and many others. Buy your copy today at www.eddiesaveamerica.com.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
If you missed out on previous shows, no worries. We have an on-demand sections of all previous shows and interviews. Go to our website, www.kardecradio.com.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Spirit. Dear listener, we're back, and we're back talking about our soul's plan. You know, Robert Schwartz has these beautiful books, Your Soul's Plan, and also Your Gifts, Your Soul's Gift. And he has a beautiful website, yoursoulsplan.com, in which you can see videos. He has chapters you can read for free. It's very, very interesting because we're talking here about universal truth. The fact of the matter is we are not reincarnated by chance. There's a plan. But, Robert, question is, in your experience, based on your studies, what you've observed, the work as a hypnotist as well, have you identified cases in which people went through experiences in their lives, but after, getting to know of their pre-birth planning, they realized they didn't fulfill what they were supposed to fulfill? Can you give us an example of such case?
Well, there's a chapter in my first book, Your Soul's Plan, about the pre-birth planning of accidents. And the story there is a woman named Christina who's now in her 60s, but many years ago when she was in her early 20s, she was employed as an administrative assistant at a college in Southern California. One of her daily duties in that job was to pick up her employer's mail. And the mailboxes were located in the basement of the building in which Christina worked. So on one particular day, just as she had done many, many times before, Christina descended those stairs to the basement mailboxes. But on this particular day, unbeknownst to her, someone had planted a pipe bomb in her employer's mailbox. So when she inserted her hand to retrieve the mail, the pipe bomb detonated. And the force from this explosion was so great that it picked her up off the ground and hurled her 10 feet backwards against a concrete wall. There were 6-foot splinters of wood that were shot like arrows out of a bow into the wall around her. 2 fingers were severed, both eardrums were ruptured, and flames from the explosion scorched her body from head to toe. When Christina got to the hospital, doctors actually had to hold magnets over her eyeballs in order to extract the shrapnel from the pipe. So we are talking here about a level of suffering that is almost unimaginable to you and me.
Mm-hmm.
Her recovery took 2 years and 10 reconstructive surgeries. At one point during that 2-year period, she was lying in her hospital bed in a tremendous amount of pain when she suddenly heard a voice inside her head, a voice that was not her own. It turns out that the force from that explosion, in addition to doing a lot of damage to Christina's body, had opened up her psychic gift. She had become clairaudient. And the voice she heard that day as she lay in the hospital bed in so much pain was one of her spirit guides. And her guide said to her, "You planned this." And of course she said, "Why?" And then the guide told her, and here's what he said. He said, "You wanted an incarnation as a gifted healer. And you knew before you were born that if you could heal yourself from the devastating effects of this bomb explosion, you could then take all of that wisdom and knowledge about healing, and turn it outward in service to other people. Well, this is in fact exactly what happened. After Christina had the 10 reconstructive surgeries, she went on to get a PhD in speech-language pathology. She set up a private clinical practice and now has healed thousands of people. She actually has the ability. She has the ability to go into a patient's brain energetically, by which I mean non-invasively, and restore language processing capability in people who have lost that due to stroke or accident. So she is a remarkably gifted healer, and the only reason she can do any of this is because she has healed herself from the effects of that bomb explosion. Now, she is somebody who has very much fulfilled her pre-birth plan.
Yes.
Your question was, are there people who don't fulfill their pre-birth plan? Yes, there are many. One of them is the person who planted the bomb, because when we went into Christina's pre-birth planning session, we heard the conversation she had with the soul who was planning to commit this act of violence. This is a very tormented soul. He had had a previous incarnation as a terrorist in the Irish Republican Army. And he was carrying, we talked about this earlier, he was carrying back into body these unhealed energies of anger, again, not for the purpose of expressing them, but rather for the purpose of healing them. But it was known before he was born and before Christina was born that he might not be successful in doing that, and that if he were not successful, it could take the form of planting this bomb that Christina would encounter. So in the pre-birth planning session, it's discussed that if the bomb explosion takes place, this will be the catalyst that sends her on a path of becoming a gifted healer. And if this other soul does not plant the bomb, if he is successful in healing the anger he's carrying back into body, then something else will happen that still gives Christina the opportunity to become a gifted healer. It could be a car accident. It could be something else. The pre-birth planning is often done in the form of potentials rather than certainties, and we have a number of what you could call backup plans. In this case, they weren't needed because the bomb was planted, so she was able to go on and fulfill what she had hoped to do. The bomber presumably is still trying to heal, and he will call to himself one opportunity after another to do this healing until eventually he does it.
It's so interesting because when you think about obstacles, we agree with you. We are born to succeed, but we have free will. So what, in your studies, what have you verified as the main obstacles that can potentially block our way from choosing to accomplish the pre-birth planning?
Well, there are many, many obstacles. One of them is simply, one of the most common is simply getting distracted by things which don't really matter at the level of the soul. You know, the term glamour is often used for this. Glamour refers to the temptations and distractions of life in the third dimension. So money is a form of glamour, fame is a form of glamour, power is a form of glamour, and then there are many other distractions, entertainment, drugs, alcohol. All those things can be part of a pre-birth plan. But the glamour itself, the distractions, often pull people off the path. And then sometimes it's just so difficult or so frightening that the personality is not willing to do the hard work that's necessary to fulfill the pre-birth plan.
It's so interesting. Yes, Kardec, when he asked this question to the spirits, they answered the main thing is about ego, selfishness. It's that's the main obstacle, right? You would agree, according to what you said, it's all ego-driven, right?
Yeah, the ego is that part of us that sees us as separate from others. The ego wants control. The ego wants these different aspects of glamour to affirm its worth. But from the perspective of the soul, these are not the higher reasons for being here. They're distractions.
Okay, now I have a question here that was sent to us by email to kardecradio@gmail.com by a listener named Paula, and she is asking about what should people do to achieve the fulfillment of their reincarnatory plan?
I think there are a number of things that people can do. Asking to know the plan and asking for assistance with the plan is very, very important. You know, your guides, the angels, the masters, the loved ones on the other side who work with you and help you, they need your request in order to spring into action, so to speak. So prayer and asking are very, very important. I think meditation is also very important. Just have a regular meditation practice in which you allow your mind to quiet, and then ask for guidance, ask for inspiration, ask for wisdom and a higher perspective. Asking to be of service is very important, and it will magnetize to you all the things you need to fulfill your pre-birth plan. Every pre-birth plan, literally every single one I've ever looked at, has some component of service to others in it. So if you pray to God or Source or whatever higher power you conceive of and say, I would like to be of service to you, I would like to be of service to the world, please help me to know how I can help, that prayer will always be answered because there's so much to do here. Once you're ready to be of service, you will be put to work if you ask for that.
Yes. Well, that's fascinating. It's about service. It's about being compassionate, as you mentioned before. Now, there is another question we need to ask you is about the importance. Since we're talking about the pre-birth planning, and we know even science already explains to us the importance of the first years of life and how they impact in our adulthood. In your studies, have you identified possible obstacles or the reverse, facilitations that happened early in childhood for the fulfillment of the birth plan?
Usually what happens in the first few years, because it's beyond the conscious control of the personality, the child, is something that facilitates the pre-birth plan. And this is true regardless of whether it's what we would consider a positive experience or what we would consider a negative experience. It's something that is planned prior to birth, the choice of the parents, the historical time period, the location of the incarnation. All of these things are set up prior to birth to facilitate the completion of the pre-birth plan. Now, occasionally, something happens that was not planned. For example, in my first book, Your Soul's Plan, there's a chapter about the pre-birth planning of deafness and blindness. And the blindness story is a gentleman who originally did not plan prior to birth to experience blindness in this lifetime, but he was born prematurely, placed into an incubator, and the nurse at the hospital accidentally put too much oxygen into the incubator, which damaged his eyes and caused him to be blind. And what happens at that point, since it was not planned by him prior to birth, he actually leaves the infant body. His spirit guides take him back to the other side. They explain to him what has happened. They actually show him images of the damaged eyes. They tell him, if the lifetime continues, you will be blind. What would you like to do? You have the option of going back into the infant body and experiencing blindness, or you can choose to end the incarnation now and plan another lifetime. So what happens at that point is fascinating. He calls in the souls of the people who are going to be in the lifetime if it continues, and he informs them, an accident has happened at the hospital. I will be blind if this lifetime continues. How do you feel about this? Do you still want to be part of my life plan? And there's a conversation with a woman who had planned to be romantically involved with him. She actually changes her mind. She says, this is not the experience I'm looking for. If you're going to continue and be blind, then I would like to change the plan and not have the relationship we had planned on. But then there are other souls who agree to it. And so after considering what everybody has to say, he decides he wants this challenge because it will facilitate his evolution as a soul. He comes back into the infant body and continues with the lifetime.
That's very interesting. I mean, there are so many interesting things regarding our birth plan. But I understand also, according to our studies in Spiritism, that there are many ways for people to become acquainted with their birth plan. If it's not only about finding a medium or somebody else to help us out, but isn't that true that you can have access through dreams or through, as you said, like even meditation, you can have flashes or glimpses of that plan? Isn't that right?
There are a lot of different ways to gain insight into your life plan. The single most powerful way that I know of is what I mentioned earlier, the between lives soul regression, because the Council of Elders can tell you exactly what you planned before birth. But there are a lot of other ways. There's working with mediums and channels. There's asking in meditation. Dream work, as you said, is very important. Before you go to sleep at night, ask your soul to send you a dream that gives you insight into your life plan. It may not work the first time you ask, but keep asking. And sooner or later, you will get a dream that you will just know is a message from your soul giving you insight into your life plan. Astrology is very important. A good astrologer can tell you a lot about your life plan. Numerology.
Let me ask you a question before anything else. But is there any setback or potential setback in getting to know of your soul plan? What would you say?
I don't believe so, because my own belief is that if somebody would be better served not knowing what their plan is, then either they will never hear about this idea of pre-birth planning, or if they do hear about it, it simply won't resonate with them. They will think this is nonsense, and then they'll quickly go on to something else without ever exploring it. But if somebody finds that this information resonates with them and they feel called to look into their life plan, to me, that's a sign that that person is ready for this information and it will be beneficial to them. That's my own belief.
But in your studies too, that we need to be very careful. Getting information from mediums. Though we understand that mediumship, we as spiritists, we understand that being a medium is just second nature, but on the same token, not every medium is reliable because of several reasons. So we would say people need to be very careful about whom they are going to discuss those personal matters, right?
I agree with that, and this is one of the reasons why I think the between life soul regression is so valuable, because then the person is not relying upon someone external to them to get the information. They're getting it themselves. But regardless of where the information comes from, it's very important to be self-referencing. Self-referencing is one of the divine virtues, and it means that you come to see yourself as the highest and best source of wisdom and knowledge for you. So you can consult experts, you can talk to family and friends, you can work with a hypnotist or mediums or channels, but in the end, you take whatever information comes to you, run it past your own discernment, and decide, is this true for me? And make your decisions based on that. It's very important from the soul's viewpoint that the incarnate personality learn to be self-referencing.
Okay. And one last question is, would you say that many people on the earth do not remember or are not fully aware of their soul's plan because of the level of evolution on the earth?
I would say that the average person does not know consciously about the concept of pre-birth planning, but that doesn't mean that they aren't fulfilling their soul plan. You know, some of the biggest indicators of whether or not you're fulfilling your plan are you following your inspirations? Are you following your aspirations? The soul will guide you through inspiration and aspiration. So if you follow those things, even if you don't know anything about pre-birth planning, that will generally lead you along the path that you planned before you were born.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing, and that's so important, right, Rob? Because if you're not feeling, usually I know people who lead a very difficult life, for example, materially speaking, But you talk to them, they're so joyful, they're so light, everything seems to be okay. And that's a sign that they are doing the right thing versus other people who are apparently without any special need, but deep inside they are somber, they are in this very dark state of the mind. So you can tell they're off track, right?
I think that's true, but also you have to keep in mind that the person who seems to be off track, whatever sort of pain or torment they might be going through, that's something that can very much lead them to be on track. So the thing that seems to have taken them off the life plan, that may be the very thing that ultimately motivates them to get back on the path they planned before they were born. And I think this is why it's very important not to judge other people, because the average person doesn't have any idea what their own life plan is, let alone somebody else's. And so you really can't know whether or not somebody is following the path that they planned or not, or even if they aren't, where it will eventually take them. You know, the darkest point can be a turning point toward light.
Mm-hmm. Two questions here that just came out as we are discussing this. One is about depression. We know depression is escalating in the world. Where is that in the pre-birth planning studies you have done? Do you have anything to share with us?
I think depression often results from not following one's life plan and also not knowing how to go about following it. But again, the pain from depression can act as a very powerful motivator to discover one's plan and to get back on that path. Mm-hmm. So it can ultimately lead to the fulfillment of what has been planned. I think a lot of times we know prior to birth that the challenges that we've planned are going to cause temporary periods of depression in our lives. It's not so much that we want to experience depression, but rather that at the soul level we're willing to experience it because we know that ultimately the challenge that caused the depression is going to produce the growth that we seek at the soul level.
Mm-hmm. I see. And the sessions you do you do them, can you do it with people wherever they are in the world?
You can, and actually I only do them by phone and by Skype.
Okay.
I used to do it in person, but I found it works just as well, if not better, by phone and Skype. The reason being that the key to going into trance is to relax, and most people are more relaxed doing the session from their own home rather than coming into an office they've never been to and having me sit there and look at them the whole time for 3.5 hours. So it really does work just as well, if not better, by phone or Skype.
Yeah. Well, the other question we had to relay upon, I would say you probably addressed it when people asked us about divorce. In this case, I recall the case you just mentioned. You mentioned at the very beginning, I think, about the abusive relationship, the fact they were supposed to heal, but it's about free will, right? If a person decides to go a different way or not to work on it, then we're not supposed to stay in an abusive relationship just because, right?
That is certainly my belief. I think sometimes we plan those kinds of relationships prior to birth for certain periods of time in the hope of learning something or being of service to another soul in a certain way. But ultimately, your soul wants you to create joy. Your soul wants you to be swimming in joy in an incarnation. And so the path is designed eventually to lead there.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, I would love to continue, listening to you, but I would recommend the listener, please read the books. Go to the website, yoursoulsplan.com. And Rob, it's fascinating the work you have been doing. And from what I'm experiencing now, I'm sure many people, like Debbie Caron said, are having a blast just listening to this. It's so consoling. It's so, really, it relieves the pain that probably people are feeling, whatever they are. Would you like to say a final message to the listeners who are connected to you right now?
The message I would leave people with is to remember that you are more than your personality, more than your body, more than your thoughts, more than your feelings. You are, in fact, a holy, eternal, courageous soul. You are the courageous soul who bravely planned, before you were born, to leave a realm of love and light and peace and joy, to come into body, to experience challenges in order to grow. That's really and truly who you are.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. And we want to stay in contact with you. And we thank you again and again for your time, for your work, and your presence at Kardec Radio today, okay?
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure to be here talking with you today.
Thank you. So, dear listener, go for it. YourSoulsPlan.com. Before the session, I went through Kardec's teachings in the Spirit's book, and some of the passages in the book, Your Soul's Plan. And I tell you, dear listener, the universality of the teachings is there. There is so much for us to understand, and especially these teachings are not only for us to keep it in our minds, but also to illuminate our pathway so we can live a better life and help others as well, because there are many people who need help. And sometimes we are suffering because we are not sharing what we have been given. And Robert Schwartz is the example of somebody who found his pathway and now is reaching out to many people around the world. We're going to give one last break. When we come back, the last part of our program today.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Getting to the Light. Spiritist Therapy for Discarnate Spirits is a small book that offers guidance to Spiritist practitioners and Spiritist counselors. Purchase your copy at www.ssbaltimore.org.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
If you missed out on any previous shows, no worries. We have an on-demand section of all previous shows and interviews. Go to our website at www.kardecradio.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Help prevent suicide by reading and sharing these books with others. 2 great books are available to help in this Kardec Radio campaign to prevent suicide. Suicide, All You Need to Know, by the international Spiritist speaker Richard Simonetti. You can buy your copy at www.roundtablepublishing-uk.com. Also, Memoirs of a Suicide by the medium Yvonne Pereda. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Kardec Radio now offers more programs during the week and weekends. Every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can follow the beautiful program God at Home with Francisca Kranz and the British Spiritist community. They will brighten your days by doing a God at Home meeting wherever you are in the world, while teaching you how to do the same in your own home with your family and friends. Every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you will hear incredibly inspirational Spiritist talks directly broadcasted by Spiritist Network. They will be true educational moments to carry out to immortality. Every Saturday, live interviews, Bridging Health and Spiritism with the host Dr. Vanessa Anceloni. You may ask questions to the interviewed guests by calling 858-769-4705. And every Sunday, tune in to Spiritist Awareness at Kardec Radio. You will hear a series of segments on a diversity of Spiritist topics. Kardec will broadcast the Spiritist Moment with Kirsten DeMello, the reading of the Spiritist book by John DeRosa and Steve Shepard, Spiritism in Your Life with Drs. Marco and Joyce Magalhães, Spiritism and the Gospel with Luis Sergio Marotta, Spiritist Education for Youth and Children with Bernadette Leal, Spiritist Music with James Marotta, Neuroscience and Spiritism with Dr. Vanessa Anceloni, and many more segments coming soon. Enjoy it all and nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
And now we return to our program.
We talked about pre-birth planning or reincarnatory plan. If you go to the Spirit's book by Allan Kardec, questions 258 onwards, you also get to know all the information about how we make those plans before being born. It's very important for us to know. If you say that because you don't remember, then you're not supposed to know, not true. Because the more we evolve, the more aware we are about our purpose in life. It's an important thing. Remember, the Spirit said, the only way to progress is to know about yourself. Self-knowledge and pre-birth planning is everything about self-knowledge. Knowing the reasons why we reincarnated, what we need to do, especially what Robert Schwartz said, the divine virtues we needed to develop. We'll find the opportunity to live a better life. Right now, we're going to wrap up the program with a final prayer. And the prayer has therapeutic purposes. You know, when we pray, as the Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec says, we're going to either ask something for us or for others. We're going to praise God, worship in the sense of being grateful as well, be thankful. 3 things: praise, gratitude, and ask. How about if we do this together now? Dear Mother, Father God, thank you for all the ones whom you send to the earth to bring relief, consolation, new hope. We now, at this very moment, ask for your guidance, so we can make the right decisions, choose the right choices that will benefit everyone and ourselves. Please help those who are lost in their pathway. May a helping hand touch them so they can awake to their purpose in life. Because we are all interconnected, and their happiness is everyone's happiness too. May those who are lost in crimes, in the criminal minds, the criminal pathways, also turn their hearts to you, knowing that sooner than later they will then find happiness. Feeling your protection, your guidance. We then ask your permission to close these moments of reflection at Kardec Radio. And so be it. Dear listener, we thank you very much for being with us at Kardec Radio. And remember, next week we're going to talk about bridging theology and science. Dr. Robert Russell is going to be with us. He's the founder and director of the Center for Theology and Natural Sciences, an institute that has been building bridges between theology and science for 30 years. And he's going to be interviewed here about very important matters. And during this week, do not forget, Sunday at 8 p.m., Spiritist Awareness with hosts around the world. And on Wednesday, Francisca Kranz and Mackenzie Mello leading the reading and the discussion of the book No Solar by André Luis Chico Xavier. And on Thursday, Vanessa Childs from Seattle, United States, is going to be streaming another Spiritist talk here at Kardec Radio. We wish you lots of blessings, but the most important part, don't forget, keep feeling the blessings of God always.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.